Well, this is certainly odd. Why am I talking about a League of Legends thing in a Paladins video? Well, because it's being developed in a way, or Paladins being developed in a way, from a design perspective that is very close to how League of Legends is being developed. So let's begin. Unlike League of Legends, Paladins doesn't have over 100 champions. It has a modest 40 champions, which includes the latest champion Imani at the time of recording. But still, consider for a second the new player. They've never seen Paladins before and they're checking out the game after coming up with an advert, YouTube, the forums, friend, or the salt mines known as Reddit. So they install the game and get into it. They pause the tutorial and they're launched into the game. On the pick screen, they see lots of champions, pick one that they like and start the game. Now on the start screen they see a pick a talent, and each thing does a different thing. And therein lies the first problem. We have 40 champions, but for each champion it has 3 talents to choose from. So if we are to think that each talent corresponds to a different playstyle, which is the design intent, there are 3 main ways to play a champion, which technically means that there are 120 plus champion styles in the game to learn for playing and countering. Right? Now that's a bit daunting, but let's not forget that there are more mechanics that we haven't even touched yet. Let's say they start a new game and notice the screen thus you can buy items. Well, what are they? Well, it's countering the enemy team on another level after you've picked your champions. So if they have a strong healer, then you can get a red item called Cauterize. Are they dependent on heals more than the other champions? Well, so yeah, you get Rejuvenate. Do your champions fall off in the late game because the enemy has a lot of CC? Get Resilience. Now the player has to also learn about the items, what they do, how they actually work, and do they even stack. Now at this point we should get nerdy for a second. Well, no, actually for a while. I need to prove a point. The item stores stack, but it employs a mechanic called diminishing returns. What this means is that if you get Cauterize 3 and every single person in the team also gets Cauterize 3 and you all hit one person, the enemy will only have a reduction of 93.6%. Wait, now that is very low. But indeed it is, my little chicken nuggets. That is very low considering what you could have gotten instead of the credits, because that's 1800 credits per person invested into this. So if you had one Cauterize at level 3 and someone else got level 1, the maximum reduction it has is 90.9%. Now if your whole team got Cauterize 2, that's 84% healing reduction. And finally another scenario is 1 Cauterize 2 and 2 Cauterize 1 amount to 72.3% reduction. If you want to try this for yourself, I will link the calculator out in the description. Now for the nerds that are watching and interested in the actual formula and how it's worked out, it's here, where X equals total attribute bonus, M equals the highest single attribute bonus, and Y is your final diminished value. Anyway, coming back to the point, the number of champions playstyles, which are more than 120, and the item store is a lot to learn. Well, it would be if these were the only things to learn in the game, but they're not. We also need to consider the fact that each champion has a set of cards, 16 to be exact, and you can use these cards to make a loadout to change and personalize your champion even more. Basically, you need to make a loadout which consists of 15 points, depending on which cards you prioritize, and with that you can better learn your champion playstyles. Well, okay, that's good, but is there anything more to learn? Well, you need to know how each map actually plays, and they are vastly different. You need to know what is a good draft, what is a bad draft. You need to actually know the interaction between the abilities and how they actually work. And at this point, I'll be honest, after playing the game for more than 2,500 hours, I still don't know how each and every ability stacks with each and every other ability. So now you come back to the real or new player. There is frankly a shit ton of things they have to learn, and it is daunting, believe me. It also particularly doesn't help that with new champions arriving, they have a much more complicated kit, meaning you have a lot to learn. So as an example again, let's use an existing champion, which is Willow, and compare her to Imani. Now I'll start by saying that Willow is one of the best designed champions in the game currently. She excels at what she is designed to do, which is heavy point denial. With Imani, the lines are blurred by a fair bit. She has a stance switching ability, not the first one, we have Strix in the game. However, apart from being a damage champion, she doesn't really have her own thing. So let me explain. Starting with Willow, we'll go over her kit, and with that we go over each of her ability. Her default weapon, Wand of Overgrowth, is an AoE ball of energy that can hit multiple people. It does 500 damage and has damage fall off, which means you do 115 minimum. Her first ability is called Dead Zone. Fire a spore that blocks all healing in an AoE for 5 seconds. If the enemy move out of it, they can't heal for 1 second. Her second ability is called Seedling. Throw a seed that has a small fuse that does 400 damage and splits into 4 smaller seeds. After another 1 second, they explode 2, dealing 400 damage each. Her movement ability is called Flutter. Propel yourself forwards and slightly upwards. Your ultimate is called Flight. Have free movement for 10 seconds, meaning you can fly in any direction. You can also use all your abilities in your ultimate, except for of course Flutter. As you can see from her kit, she really excels at denying the point to the enemy team with what she has. She can constantly shoot a point that will hit multiple enemies if they are standing there, so in smaller maps Willow really does excel. Then we have Dead Zone. Either stand in the zone while taking damage and know you would compensate, or step out of the area. Then furthermore than that, she has Seedling. Take up to 2000 damage if you don't move, and again leave the focus place. Flutter allows you to reposition yourself without denying more areas. Her ultimate does the same thing as Flutter but for 10 seconds, and you can literally go anywhere and everywhere while using all the ultimates, or abilities, sorry. Everything in Willow is connected in a simple kit. We know what she does, and it's not hard to explain to a new player, and correct mechanical knowledge means you can really go into each map for optimal denying, or even hit targets mid-air with a default weapon. What this means is, apart from having a simple kit, she has mastery potential that will pay off if you put in the hours. If you look at her talents that she has, we have the following: Blast Flower, Nightshade, and Scorn. Adding an extra thing to her abilities, except movement. Now Blast Flower will stack damage more hits you get off one person. Nightshade adds a little bit of more burst to Dead Zone, and Scorn does more damage faster, which still complements her base ideology, keeping people away from the point of your choosing, normally the objective. All in all, it's a seriously great and coherent kit. Now we move on to Marnie, and she is a damage champion. What else? I mean, I seriously don't know how to explain her role, so I will read her kit word to word from the Paladins wiki and the patch notes. Also, before reading this, I will not read her first ability, I will read the second one, if that makes sense. The second ability Imani has is Elemental Shift. Shift your elemental alignment, gaining access to new abilities. Stance switching takes 1 second. Her default weapon is called Dragon Gauntlets. This ability has 3 parts. Yeah, she really does. Frost. Frostbolt. Sling a Frostbolt that does 650 damage every 0.8 seconds. Fire. Pyreball. Charge a Pyreball over 1.6 seconds that deals 1000 damage at maximum charge. Passive. Clearcast. As Imani deals damage, she generates mana. When her mana is full, the next Frostbolt or Pyreball she casts is instant. Neither Frostbolt nor Pyreball has damage fall off. Her first ability is called Frost Bomb or Inferno Cannon, depending on your stance, fire or frost. So Frost. Frost Bomb. Release an orb of frost dealing 800 damage at maximum range and root enemies hit for 1.5 seconds. Reactivating this ability mid-air detonates it. Fire. Inferno Cannon. Unleash a torrent of piercing fire forwards, dealing 110 damage every 0.9 seconds over 3 seconds. The movement ability is called Frostfire Glide. Channeling both elements, you glide through the air for 2.5 seconds with limited upwards movements. The ultimate is called Dragon's Call. Summon a literal dragon which has its own control scheme. It is as follows. Left mouse button is Frost/Fire Breath, Q or space is Fly Up, and right mouse button or F is Fly Down. And now we still haven't covered her talents. So Splitting Ice, Frostball bounce from additional enemy dealing reduced damage. Pyromania, every third Pyreball that you hit explodes, dealing nearby or hitting nearby enemies. Mana Rift, after standing still for 2 seconds, create a Mana Rift around you that generates mana. Leaving the Mana Rift will destroy it. I mean, I'll be honest, Imani is definitely a first for Evil Mojo. Unlike Strix, where it's just his weapon that swaps plus flare versus scope, Imani takes things to the next level. But apart from that, do we really know what Imani excels at, apart from doing damage? See, honestly I can't say. If the enemy composition is grouped up, then you can choose Splitting Ice and run a Frost Bomb more. If you want to focus on a single character with Burst, you choose Pyromania. The ultimate just summons the dragon, has a lot of health and does far more damage, but is there a situation where the dragon is more valuable than other ultimates? Is there a specific situation? Now, I may be really stupid here and I'm missing the very obvious point, but Imani does a lot of things for one champion, which means she really isn't that good at that one type of role. Now, coming back to my point, please try explaining Imani and Willow to a brand new player in under 10 seconds. I mean, hell, try explaining both of them to yourself out loud. See, it's very simple with Willow. I'll start right now. You pick Willow if the enemy team are going to stay grouped up. You shoot mini bombs from your wand, use Dead Zone if they don't heal in a specific area, Seedlings to move and otherwise take a lot of damage. You fly/dash forwards in a forward movement ability, and finally you can move freely in the air in your ultimate. Imani honestly would be more like, she is a cool looking dragon girl, you know? A very attractive looking girl, last of a kind, and she has a dragon. Once again, she is quite the looker. Fire doesn't hurt her, but she can definitely hurt you. She has some great leadership skills, and again, did I mention she's like smoking hot? I mean, on a more serious note, while Emilia Clarke is a very good looking woman, better with a brunette hair than blonde, but that's a different point. There's a lot of things that you have to explain, and it's very situational anyways. Is there an instance where you pick Imani over the other damage champions? Well, you know, time will tell once the community has played her and figured out the best way to play her. But until then, I really couldn't tell you. What does Imani and a kit have to do with this video though? After all, I did spend a good 11 minutes trying to explain or talking about a kit. See, well, remember the number of playstyles I mentioned? Imani changes that. Instead of having 3 playstyles, she now has 5. Now with more champions imminent in the game, do we really want to make champions as complicated as Imani, if not more so? Well, having an extensive number of champions and playstyles already available. While I understand the game needs a constant stream of content to appease the older, and if it's a big enough change, new players, it's getting dangerously close to the point where more and more new players are going to get discouraged because of time investment needed for the game, especially if it's a casual game and they want to play and not dedicate the full game time level of hours. But you know, it's not all doom and gloom though. Here are the number of champions released and their years. So in 2015 there were a total of 9 champions released. 8 of them were the original core roster, with Eevee being added later. In 2016 there were 11 champions released. In 2017 there were a huge number of 14, and in 2018 there were only 5. In the 2019 teaser video we were told there will be 6 new champions, which I'm guessing includes Imani. So it's a good sign that they are slowing down again. Other content such as game modes, maps, events should be emphasized more in order to attract and maintain the players. While even Mojo are also pushing an esports scene, the game has to be easy to watch. The reason League gets away with the insane number of champions with their esports is simply because League is played on one map over and over again. See, while it not be as easy as Counter-Strike, but one of the maps add a sort of stability. The fact that you know the jungle creeps will always be in that position, or Baron will be available at a certain time, and distance from mid to the top will stay the same, means you can deduce other things quite easily. Even if you add a cosmetic change to the map, the base map will always stay the same, such as Dota 2. Now, finally, or my final point would be balancing, and it's not as easy as you would believe. The game has a lot of moving parts, and changing even one thing can lead to quite dramatic effects. Adding more and more to that will disrupt the balance even more. What I mean by this is the fact that items, talents, maps, champions, and even cards have a certain synergy, and some tend to have a bigger impact than the others. Meaning we can get strong champions and weak champions per update, which you know does happen, apart from balancing the cogs, which is better explained in a different video. The problem here is the same thing Evil Mojo pride themselves on, the regular updates. The fact that they're regular updates, basically one every 2 weeks, means there was a lot of time investment outside of playing the game to be fully informed in the game. Basically what this means is what works now may not work in 3 weeks, and what is terrible now may be vital in the future. This sort of insight needs investment in outside of the game to get good, and secondly, mechanical knowledge out of the game to know what works where. If you're a casual player, you won't really care, but if you're transitioning to dedicate more and more time to this game, it's something to consider. After all, if it's the regular players that love the game enough to support it with money and skins, a lot of things, if not all, can be improved upon. Paladins is not that old game for not to have big changes. It honestly feels time from switching the thinking of pump out more content to entitle the player's mentality to improving the quality of life or the longevity of the game. After all, this does work, as we've seen from TF2. The game is quite polarizing for new players, but it's nowhere near as bad as it could get.